Welcome to the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program Eligibility Certification Training. My name is Claudia Melodic and I am the Migrant Education Services Manager. This certification training is for anyone who has never been trained in determining eligibility for the Migrant Education Program or for those who would like to take the full training again. If you have a good understanding of how to determine MEP eligibility and need to recertify, you will need to take the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program Eligibility Refresher Training. If you need the refresher training, contact me at claudia.melodic@tvoc.org or 952-232-1210. In this training, I will go over the Title I Part C MEP eligibility definitions and factors and practice scenarios. I will go over instructions for the paper certificate of eligibility and needs assessment form. I will also do a quick overview of the COE review process, M6, and re-interviews. Finally, I will also introduce the IDNR team and inform you of the next step for certification. Throughout this presentation, recruiter refers to any trained and certified staff determining eligibility, regardless of their job title at Tri-Valley Opportunity Council or local education agencies. To understand how a child qualifies for the Migrant Education Program, you will need to learn the key definitions that are the factors for determining eligibility. There are several definitions that may also be used to determine if a child is eligible for services. However, I will only be going over the most crucial definitions at this time. The program definitions regarding eligible children and qualifying moves are found in Section 3 of the COE, where eligibility information is documented. A migratory child is a child or youth not older than 21 years of age who is entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law, or is not yet at a grade level at which the LEA provides a free public education. The child has also made a qualifying move as a migratory agricultural worker or a migratory fisher, or with, to join, or precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or a migratory fisher. A migratory agricultural worker is an individual who made a qualifying move in the preceding 36 months and after doing so, engaged in new temporary or seasonal employment or personal subsistence in agriculture or actively sought such new employment and has a recent history of moves for temporary or seasonal agricultural employment. A migratory fisher is an individual who made a qualifying move in the preceding 36 months and after doing so, engaged in new temporary or seasonal employment or personal subsistence in fishing or actively sought such new employment and has a recent history of moves for temporary or seasonal fishing employment. A qualifying move is a move from one residence to another residence and due to economic necessity and from one school district to another school district. Engaged means actively doing qualifying work or having attended orientation for seasonal or temporary employment. Soon after is within 60 days after the qualifying move. Actively sought implies the need to take positive actions to seek qualifying work. For example, the individual or someone on his or her behalf may have applied for qualifying work at a particular agricultural or fishing job site, applied at a center that coordinates available temporary or seasonal employment, applied for such employment before moving, or have moved reasonably believing, based on newspaper ads or word of mouth, that such work would be available after the move. This should occur within 60 days of the qualifying move. Recent history of moves for qualifying work is a move that resulted in temporary or seasonal agriculture or fishing employment. Given the plural form of the word moves, an individual must have made at least 2 moves for qualifying work within 36 months of the recruiter's interview. Qualifying work is temporary or seasonal employment or personal subsistence in agriculture or fishing. Seasonal employment is employment that occurs only during a certain period of the year because of the cycles of nature, and that by its nature may not be continuous or carried on throughout the year. Temporary employment is employment that lasts for a limited period of time, usually a few months, but no longer than 12 months. Agricultural work is the production or initial processing of raw agricultural products such as crops, poultry or livestock, dairy work, as well as the cultivation or harvesting of trees that is performed for wages or personal subsistence. Personal subsistence is when the worker and the worker's family, as a matter of economic necessity, consume as a substantial portion of their food intake the crops, dairy products, or livestock they produce or the fish they catch. Initial processing is work that is beyond the production stage of agricultural work and precedes the transformation of the raw product into something more refined. It's working with a raw agricultural or fishing product. Initial processing ends once the transformation of the raw product into something more refined begins. The MEP Eligibility Factors Checklist is a useful tool that can be used to help determine MEP eligibility. Keep in mind that if you use the checklist, your interview should be in a comfortable, casual conversation where you are asking non-leading questions to determine if the children and the worker meet the factors on this sheet. For a sample of interview questions, see the sample interview script that is shared from the Migrant Education Program National IDNR Manual. Here are some things to consider when using the MEP Eligibility Factors Checklist. Moves and qualifying activities from other states are considered in determining eligibility. The child does not have to move with the worker for recent history of moves. However, they must be in our state to be included on the COE. The worker's status date and the child's qualifying arrival date are not always the same. Babies born after the move are not eligible for the MEP. However, BAM babies and other children who have graduated can be included in the comment section of the COE. You will notice that the Migrant Education Program definitions are part of the factors we will be going over. These factors will be used to determine if a child meets the definition of a migratory child and that the worker meets the definition of a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, as well as the other factors meeting the definitions for eligibility purposes. Factor 1. Child's age. The child is younger than 22 years old on the date of the interview. Factor 2. Child's school completion status. The child is entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law. For example, the child is not a high school graduate or does not hold a high school equivalency diploma, or the child is not yet at a grade level at which the school district provides a free public education. The Minnesota Department of Education recognizes diplomas or secondary school degrees and certificates of completion in lieu of a diploma issued by another country. Factor 3A. Child's qualifying move. The child moved within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview. The move made by the child was due to economic necessity and from one residence to another residence and from one school district to another. Factor 3B. Child's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or fisher. The child's qualifying move in Factor 3A was with, to join, or to precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or a migratory fisher, whose status has been determined in factors 4A and 4B. Let's take a closer look at these factors. In factor 3A, you are trying to determine if the child made a qualifying move based on the information provided by the interviewee. For factor 3B, you are trying to determine if the child made the qualifying move with, to join, or to precede someone who is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. There may be cases where the child is also the worker. In these cases, you are trying to determine if the child made the qualifying move as a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Both factors 3A and 3B combined meet the definition of a migratory child. You may need to come back to factor 3B if at this point you have not yet determined if the worker meets the definition of a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Here is a visual of migratory children and youth. The acronym RED is used as a reminder of the qualifying move definition. R for residence, E for economic necessity, and D for district. In this scenario, the children and youth are not older than 21, they are entitled to free public education, or are not yet at grade level. They have made a new qualifying move in the last 36 months with, to join or precede, a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, or on his or her own as a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. When they meet all of the factors, the children are eligible for the Title I Migrant Education Program. The qualifying arrival date, which is the date in which they arrived to the current school district, is good for 36 months. You will notice that in this scenario, the older migratory child is also a migratory agricultural worker. In this case, we would fill out a separate certificate of eligibility for the youth worker. If the migratory children make a new move from one residence to another due to economic necessity and from one district to another within 36 months before their qualifying arrival date expires, and this move is with, to join, or proceed, or on their own as migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers, they will have a new qualifying arrival date that is good for another 36 months. MEP eligibility can end at any time within the 36 months for 21-year-olds, but the migratory agricultural worker status may remain. If the children do not make a new qualifying move and their qualifying arrival date expires, they are no longer considered migratory children and are not eligible for MEP services. However, they may be served under continuation of services during the performance period in which their eligibility expired. Let's look at the factors for migratory agricultural worker and migratory fisher. Factor 4A, migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers qualifying move. The parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, moved within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview, and the move made by the parent, guardian, or spouse, or the child, if the child is the worker, was due to economic necessity and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another. Factor 4B, qualifying work for the migratory agricultural worker or fisher. After the qualifying move in Factor 4A, the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of moves for qualifying work. The qualifying work is seasonal employment or temporary employment or personal subsistence. The qualifying work is agricultural or fishing. They need to meet factors 4A and 4B for them to have a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher status. Now, factor 4B has a lot of different things to consider, so we're going to take a closer look. Let's look at the first part of Factor 4B. After the qualifying move in Factor 4A, the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is a worker, engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move. Engaged is if they are doing initial processing work that is seasonal or temporary in agriculture or fishing. Engaged can mean that they attended orientation for qualifying work soon after the move. A quick side note, we try to gather orientation dates from processing plants to have a good understanding of when workers may be engaged in qualifying work through orientation. Soon after is within 60 days of the qualifying move. If they engage more than 60 days after the move, you would need to contact me for prior approval. For temporary employment to be considered qualifying work, the worker must be engaged no more than 12 months. Personal subsistence has never been used to determine eligibility in our state. That's not to say it can't happen here, but if you determine eligibility using personal subsistence, a comment must be provided with details clearly explaining this determination. Let's look at the second part of Factor 4B, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of moves for qualifying work. The qualifying work is seasonal employment or temporary employment or personal subsistence. The qualifying work is agricultural or fishing. If they did not engage in qualifying work, we need to know what they did to look for or actively seek qualifying work soon after the move. They need to have at least 2 moves for past history where they engaged in qualifying work. History is in the last 3 years from your interview date. These past moves do not need to meet the definition of qualifying move unless you are using one to document when the worker established as a migratory agriculture worker or migratory fisher. In such cases, you would document the past date in which they made the qualifying move and engaged in qualifying work soon after that move. To meet the definition of migratory agriculture worker or migratory fisher, the worker needs to meet factors 4A and either the first or second part of 4B. Here is a visual for a worker who has established as a migratory agricultural worker. This worker made a qualifying move in the last 3 years from the interview date, and they engaged in a new qualifying activity soon after that move. Their migratory agricultural worker status is good for 36 months from that qualifying move. If the migratory agriculture worker makes a new qualifying move and they engage in new qualifying activities soon after the move, they will have a new status date. Their status as a migratory agriculture worker remains for 36 months even if there are no more qualifying moves. It's important to note that children may be eligible even if a migratory agriculture worker makes a qualifying move and does not engage in qualifying work. As long as the children have made the move with to join or precede the migratory agriculture worker, they may be eligible. An interview should be conducted for every new move that the family makes to determine eligibility. If the worker does not make a new qualifying move for qualifying work and their status expires, they are no longer considered a migratory agricultural worker and their children might not be eligible for the MEP. However, as previously stated, an interview should be conducted for all moves that the family makes to determine if they are eligible for the MEP. The eligibility flowchart is another tool you can use. It provides a visual of the eligibility factors checklist. Use whichever is most useful to you. Now it's time to put into practice what you have learned. If you haven't done so already, Print the eligibility factors checklist to use with the scenarios and the sample COE to look over Section 3 when we go over that part. I will go over the instructions on how to fill out the COE after the scenarios. Pay attention to each scenario, as some have an interview date that you will need to consider when determining eligibility for the children. Scenario 1. Pablo, a father of 4 school-aged children, moved on his own July 15, 2016, from his family's home in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, to Bradenton, Florida, in search of work picking oranges. 2 weeks after his move, he engages in the work and is there for 2 months. Once the harvest is over, he moves back to Arkansas. Then, on January 18, 2017, he moves again on his own to Eugene, Oregon, to work with his brother at a local restaurant during the slow season. On September 1st, 2017, his wife and 4 children join him in Oregon, while Pablo continues his work in the restaurant. The recruiter interviews the family on September 12, 2017. Using the checklist, we will go over each factor to see if the children meet the eligibility requirements. Factor 1. Child's age. Are the children younger than 22 years of age on the date of the interview? Factor 2. Child's school completion. Are the children entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law, or not yet at a grade level at which the school district provides a free public education? Factor 3A. Child's qualifying move. Did the children move within 36 months preceding the date of the interview, due to economic necessity, and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another? Factor 3B. Child's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Is the children's qualifying move in Factor 3A as migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers, or made with, to join, or to precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, as determined in Factors 4A and 4B? For Factor 1, we can determine that the children are not older than 22 years of age based on the statement for school-aged children. We can also determine that they meet Factor 2 for school completion status based on that same statement. Factor 3A is the children's qualifying move. In this scenario, the children had one move that was within 36 months from the interview. It was from Pine Bluff, Arkansas to Eugene, Oregon on September 1st, 2017. Factor 3B is the children's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Let's take a look to determine if the worker established himself as a migratory agricultural worker. The worker's move and qualifying work. Factor 4A. Migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers qualifying move. Did the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, move within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview, due to economic necessity, and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another? Factor 4B. Qualifying work for the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. After the qualifying move in Factor 4A, did the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of moves for qualifying work? And is the work seasonal employment, or temporary employment, or personal subsistence? And is the work agricultural or fishing? The worker in this scenario is Pablo. He made 3 qualifying moves. On July 15, 2016, from Pine Bluff, Arkansas to Bradenton, Florida. 2 months later, when the harvest is over, he moves back to Arkansas. He then moves again on January 18, 2017, from Pine Bluff, Arkansas to Eugene, Oregon. All 3 moves are from one residence to another, due to economic necessity and from one school district to another. All three moves meet Factor 4A. Factor 4B, in which move did Pablo engage in qualifying work soon after the move? He has two qualifying moves where he engages in work, but he engaged in qualifying work in only one of those two moves. He started picking oranges soon after his qualifying move from Arkansas to Florida. He meets Factor 4B. Based on this information, the children also meet Factor 3B. The children made a qualifying move on September 1st, 2017 to join Pablo, who is a migratory agricultural worker. The children are eligible for MEP services. Section 3 of the COE is where eligibility for the MEP is recorded. Although the names of the school districts are missing on this example, as well as the other example provided, this information must always be filled out on the COE. For this purpose, I will make up the name of each school district. This is what Section 3 on the COE would look like for this scenario. It reads as follows. The children listed on this form moved due to economic necessity from a residence in Pine Bluff School District, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, USA, to a residence in Eugene School District, Eugene, Oregon. The children moved to join or precede the worker. The worker, Pablo, is the parent/guardian. The children moved on September 1st, 2017. The worker moved on January 18, 2017. The qualifying arrival date was September 1st, 2017. The worker moved due to economic necessity on July 15, 2016, from a residence in Pine Bluff School District, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, USA, to a residence in Bradenton School District, Bradenton, Florida, and engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move. The qualifying work, picking oranges, was seasonal employment and agricultural work. As you can see, numbers 1, 2, and 3 document the qualifying move in detail where the children moved as the worker or with to join or precede the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Numbers 4, 5, and sometimes 6 for temporary work document the qualifying move in which the worker established as a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher and the qualifying activity that he or she engaged in. You will learn that any to join or precede moves will require a comment explaining why the children joined or preceded the migratory agricultural worker, as is the case in this scenario. Quiz time. If you interviewed this family today, would the children be eligible for the MEP? Why or why not? Please provide the answer in your email request for the certification test. Scenario 2. On August 24, 2016, a worker, his spouse, and two children ages 5 and 7 moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Biglerville, Pennsylvania to engage in seasonal agricultural work picking peaches. The father begins work the next day and continues working until October 2016. After the work ends, the entire family moves on October 28, 2016 to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the mother obtains work in a hotel. The recruiter finds the family in August 2017. Using the checklist, we will go over each factor to see if the children meet the eligibility requirements. Factor 1. Child's age. Are the children younger than 22 years of age on the date of the interview? Factor 2. Child's school completion. Are the children entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law, or not yet at a grade level at which the school district provides a free public education? Factor 3A. Child's qualifying move. Did the children move within 36 months preceding the date of the interview, due to economic necessity, and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another? Factor 3B. Child's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Is the children's qualifying move in Factor 3A as migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers, or made with, to join, or to precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, as determined in Factors 4A and 4B? For Factor 1, we can determine that the children are not older than 22 years of age based on the information provided. We have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. We can also determine that they meet Factor 2 for school completion status based on that information. Factor 3A is the children's qualifying move. In this scenario, the children have 2 moves that were within 36 months from the interview date. The first qualifying move was from Cleveland, Ohio to Biglerville, Pennsylvania on August 24, 2016. The second qualifying move was from Biglerville, Pennsylvania to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on October 28, 2016. Factor 3B is the children's qualifying move relative to the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. Let's take a look to determine if the worker or workers establish themselves as migratory agricultural workers. The workers' move and qualifying work. Factor 4A. Migratory agricultural workers or migratory fishers qualifying move. Did the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, move within the 36 months preceding the date of the interview, due to economic necessity, and from one residence to another residence, and from one school district to another? Factor 4B. Qualifying work for the migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. After the qualifying move in Factor 4A, did the parent, guardian, spouse, or child, if the child is the worker, engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, or did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the move, but he or she actively sought new qualifying work and has a recent history of moves for qualifying work? And is the work seasonal employment, or temporary employment, or personal subsistence? And is the work agricultural or fishing? In this scenario, both parents made a move and both parents engaged in different types of work. We need to determine who the migratory agricultural worker is. On August 24, 2016, they moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Biglerville, Pennsylvania. Then they moved on October 28, 2016 from Biglerville, Pennsylvania to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Both moves are from one residence to another due to economic necessity and from one school district to another. Both the worker and his spouse meet Factor 4A for each of these moves. Factor 4B. In which move did they engage in qualifying work soon after the move? In the first qualifying move, the father engages in seasonal agricultural work picking peaches the day after the move. Therefore, he meets Factor 4B and has established himself as a migratory agricultural worker for 36 months from August 24, 2016. His wife does not engage in any type of work in the first move. In the second qualifying move, his wife obtains work at a hotel. That is not a qualifying activity, therefore she does not establish herself as a migratory agricultural worker. Based on the information, the children meet Factor 3B because they made a qualifying move with their father, who is a migratory agricultural worker. This is what Section 3 on the COE would look like for this scenario. The children listed on this form moved due to economic necessity from a residence in Biglerville School District, Biglerville, Pennsylvania, USA, to a residence in Philadelphia School District, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The children moved with the worker. The worker, Javier, is the parent/guardian. The qualifying arrival date was October 28, 2016. The worker moved due to economic necessity on August 24, 2016 from a residence in Cleveland School District, Cleveland, Ohio, USA, to a residence in Biglerville School District, Biglerville, Pennsylvania, and engaged in new qualifying work soon after the move. The qualifying work, picking peaches, was seasonal employment and agricultural work. Quiz time. How many qualifying arrival dates do the children have? Please provide the answer in your email request for the certification test. If initial interview questions do not draw out the information needed to determine eligibility, make sure you are asking additional non-leading questions. Review the sample interview script form to familiarize yourself with additional questions prior to conducting an interview. Take as many notes as necessary during the interview, as you may need to share that information. If you are still not sure if a child is eligible, let the family know that you need to check with your supervisor or the state education agency, and you will notify them of the determination. We will need to review all of the factors closely. Having all of the information from the interview will help determine if the children qualify for the migrant education program. If more information is needed, you may need to contact the family for further information before we can determine eligibility. Once you determine that the family is eligible, you will proceed to fill out a COE. These are the instructions for the paper COE. The Migrant Education Services Data System Specialist will train on the eCOE. You will follow the same instructions for the paper COE and the eCOE, but there are a few things that are on the eCOE that are not on the paper COE. You may follow along using the COE and needs assessment instructions that were shared with this training. Things to do before filling out a COE. Check MIS 2000 or M6 before filling out a certificate of eligibility to avoid duplicate entries. Determine eligibility for the migrant education program. Things to do after filling out a COE. Review the COE with the interviewee. Notify the family that they may receive a phone call for a re-interview. To search student records in M6, log into your M6 account. Search by first name, last name, and date of birth. Verify the qualifying arrival date. If the qualifying arrival date is the same, do not fill out a COE. If the qualifying arrival date is different, verify the information with the interviewee and fill out a COE if applicable. If you need to set up an M6 account or are having trouble logging in, contact the data system specialist. A COE must be completed every time a child makes a new qualifying move that would renew the child's eligibility for the MEP. All attempts should be made to complete all data elements and sections of the COE. In cases where a response may not be required or does not apply, the recruiter must write a dash on the paper COE or leave a blank on the eCOE. All other information must be provided. If the recruiter completes a COE for a family, the recruiter must fill out a separate COE for any child who has a different qualifying arrival date or for any child who has different eligibility criteria than the rest of the children in the family, such as an out-of-school youth who may have moved as the worker. The qualifying arrival date is the date that both the child and the worker completed moves to the same school district. If more than one COE is necessary, the recruiter must complete all sections on each form. The recruiter must not include any child in the child data section who was born after the qualifying move described on the COE in number 1 of the qualifying moves and work section, or is not eligible to receive a free public education through grade 12 under state law, or did not make the qualifying move described on the COE in number 1 of the qualifying moves and work section. The BAM babies and those not eligible for a free public education may be listed in the comments section if necessary. Use blue ink for the paper COE. Family data section. In this section of the COE, the recruiter will record the contact information for the children and the name of the children's parents or guardians. Record legal last name or names and legal first name. If the parent guardian has two last names or a hyphenated last name, record the individual's last name as it legally exists. The term parent guardian on this form and in other sections of these instructions includes a legal guardian loco parentis, such as a grandparent or step-parent with whom the child lives. If the children's legal parent guardian is different from the current parent guardian, provide the name of the children's legal parent guardian in the comments section. If the child is responsible for his or her own welfare, for example, an emancipated youth, write a dash in the parent guardian 1 and parent guardian 2 lines. Child data section. Child data includes the name, sex, birth date, race, and other relevant information of each child. All columns should be filled in. If the migratory child is the migratory agricultural worker, do not record the name in the family data section. Only record their current address, telephone numbers, home base address, and email. Add their personal information in the child data section. A recruiter should include all children with the same family and eligibility data on the same COE. Any child who has different current family or eligibility data, including a different qualifying arrival date, must be documented on a separate COE. Be sure to number COEs if this is the case. For example, if you have two COEs for one family, on one COE, write 1 of 2, and on the second COE, write 2 of 2. Qualifying moves and work section. This section is where you document the information referred to in the eligibility factors checklist. In this section, record the qualifying move and qualifying work information that the state believes documents the child's eligibility for the program. Throughout this section, the term worker refers to the child's parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher. The term qualifying work, as used in this section, refers to new, temporary, or seasonal employment or personal subsistence in agriculture or fishing. The qualifying moves documented in this section are the qualifying moves that meet the Title I MEP eligibility criteria. That is, number 4 documents the move soon after which the worker engaged in qualifying work or after which he or she actively sought qualifying work, and number 1 documents the child's move as or with or to join or precede the worker. Comment section. The comment section of the COE allows the recruiter to provide additional information or details that clarify the reasons for the recruiter's eligibility determination. The recruiter should write clear and detailed comments so an independent party who has no prior knowledge of the eligibility determination can understand the recruiter's reasoning for determining that the children are eligible. At a minimum, the recruiter must provide comments that clearly explain items 2BI if the children and the worker moved separately. If the children joined or preceded the worker, record the reason for the child's later move or the worker's later move. If the worker moved from a different school district than the children, record the name of the school district in which the worker resided immediately prior to the move. 4A, if the worker engaged in new qualifying work more than 60 days after the qualifying move. Remember to verify with the SEA before making eligibility determination. 4B, if the worker did not engage in new qualifying work soon after the qualifying move. In this case, the recruiter must document that the worker actively sought new qualifying work and the worker has a recent history of moves for qualifying work. 5. The worker is a migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher on the basis of personal subsistence, meaning that the worker and the worker's family, as a matter of economic necessity, consume as a substantial portion of their food intake the crops, dairy products, or livestock they produce, or the fish they catch. 6A or 6B. The employment is temporary based on the worker's statement or the employer's statement. In particular, record the information provided by the worker or employer regarding how long they expect the employment to last. The comment should be of sufficient length to adequately document how the recruiter came to the eligibility decision. Check this box. The temporary work is or was less than 12 months. Expected time frame is or was from, you're going to record the month and year that they started to the month and year they ended or expected to end. Record the information provided by the worker or employer regarding how long they expect the employment to last. McKinney-Vento eligible. Children and youth who experience homelessness have the right to receive a free appropriate public education ensured by the McKinney-Vento Act. The law requires schools to remove barriers to enrollment, attendance, and success for homeless students. See the migrant students experiencing homelessness to check for eligibility. Mark this box if applicable. Here is an example of a comment for 4B with detailed information. The worker applied at Seneca. That's what they did to actively seek new qualifying work when they first arrived here. For their history, they have that on July 23, 2017, they moved from Eagle Pass, Texas to Glencoe, Minnesota and packed corn. For their second history, they have that they moved on June 12, 2018 from Eagle Pass, Texas to Glencoe, Minnesota and packed peas. Interviewee signature section. In this section, the interviewee signs and dates the COE on the day the interview is conducted. The interviewee must also write his or her relationship to the child. It's very important to inform the interviewee of FERPA and the rights and responsibilities found on the back of the COE. Read the full statement in the interviewee signature section so the interviewee understands the purpose of the COE and that they are agreeing to the release and transfers of their child's education and health records to and from other schools and educational agencies. This statement is in Spanish on the back of the COE. Currently, we are conducting limited face-to-face interviews due to the pandemic. During a phone or video conference call or in-person interview, we are not collecting the interviewee signature. Follow your LEA's guidance for contacting or interacting with families. Check the box, due to COVID-19 pandemic, signature was unable to be collected. Verbal authorization was obtained and interviewee agrees to the above statement and the information collected on the COE. The person who signs the COE or verbally agrees must be the source of the information contained in the document and should verify any information provided by another source. We may need to collect the signature at a later date and families will be notified if necessary. Eligibility certification section. The recruiter signs and dates the COE on the day the interview is conducted in this section. The COE is a legal document. Read the statement to fully understand what you are signing. We take the information a family provides as fact. If you have reasonable doubt about the information provided, you may ask the family for documentation such as a bill from their previous residence. You do not need to share that information with us, but keep a record of this in case we ask you for more information. The SEA reviewer must check each completed COE to ensure that the written documentation is sufficient and that based on the recorded data, The children may be enrolled in the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program or Migrant Head Start. The SEA designated reviewer must sign and date the COE on the day it was reviewed. Quality control. The person filling out the COE is always the first reviewer. The Migrant Education Services Data Coordinator is the second reviewer and will review the COE for complete information and accurate eligibility determination. Always review your COE before emailing a scanned copy to the Data Coordinator. Mail original COEs to the Lee Center Administrative Office weekly. Reviewing your COE for accuracy is very important, as it will avoid delays in the COE approval process. All minimum data elements on a COE are relevant for state and federal reporting purposes. If there is missing or inaccurate information, the Data Coordinator will need to reach out to you for corrections. For an in-depth training on the process for reviewing, verifying, and approving of COEs, you will need to take the General Certificate of Eligibility Process and Procedure training. The COE review checklist has also been provided to facilitate in this process. Here is an overview of that process. The interviewer determines eligibility, does first review, and emails a protected copy of the COE to the Data Coordinator. The Data Coordinator does the second review. If there is missing information or eligibility is not clear, she will ask the interviewer to update the COE with necessary information. If filled out correctly, the COE is entered in MIS 2000 by the Data Coordinator, and the eCOE is submitted to the Migrant Education Services Manager. If eligibility is not clear, the manager rejects the eCOE to the Data Coordinator with comments in the view log. The Data Coordinator may follow up with the interviewer for more information. If the eCOE is approved by the manager, services can begin. Students under second and third year of eligibility may be served right away. This process is for the paper COE and for those who do not have access or an account in MIS 2000. If you have access and an account for MIS 2000 and you complete a paper COE, you will need to enter the data in MIS 2000 before mailing the original COE to us. For your review process, check that the COE is complete and includes comments where applicable. Make sure interviewee checks spelling of names, dates of birth, and other information for accuracy. Anyone with access to MIS 2000 or web-based MIS 2000 needs to enter their paper COEs into the database within 24 hours. On the paper COE, print your name as first reviewer. Include the date that it was entered in MIS 2000, your initials, and the COE ID number. Mail the COE to the Migrant Education Services Data Coordinator located in the center. You will be notified if a COE needs updates or clarification for eligibility. It is crucial to update the COE as services cannot begin until the COE is signed by the SEA. The Needs Assessment form helps us to have a better understanding of individual student needs and which services we can provide. Please encourage families to take a few minutes to fill it out. This form can be filled out on your device or may be printed. It should be filled out completely and submitted with the original paper COE to the Data Coordinator. The Needs Assessment is part of the eCOE, and the Data Systems Specialist will go over those instructions with you. The Needs Assessment should be filled out for each eligible child listed on the COE. It's especially important to fill it out for secondary students and out-of-school youth. Someone will need to follow up to meet their needs if resources are available. Record the child's legal first name, last name, date of birth, and their age. Record the name of the school where the child attends when they return to their home base. Record the child's last grade completed. If you select Other, add a comment in the comments box. Record the child's Minnesota address where they currently live. Is the child an out-of-school youth? Check the circle if the answer is yes. Record the best telephone number for the student or parent. Is it okay to text? Check the circle if the answer is yes. Record or select preferred language from the drop-down. If you select Other, add a comment in the comments box. Record the student or parent's email address. Record or select other social media that would be best to inform them. What supplementary instructional services are needed most? Check all supplementary instructional services that are needed. If Other is checked, add instructional service in the field provided. These are some examples of the types of services that fall under some of those listed. MEP paid teacher or system contracted to conduct reading and/or math instruction. Purchasing materials and/or registration for a student to take the GED exam. Assistance with orientation to higher education, and facilitating work-study opportunities for students. What supplementary support services are needed most? Check all supplementary support services that are needed. If Other is checked, add support service in the field provided. These are some examples of the types of services that fall under some of those listed. Giving students program-funded educational supplies, advocating such as linking with other agencies or school services, activities that assist in accessing basic human needs such as food, clothing, and shelter, helping with school enrollment, advocacy related to COVID-19, and arranging health or dental visits. Parent involvement. What would help you support your child's education? Check all parent involvement items that would help support the parent in their child's education. If Other is checked, add it in the field provided. Your child. Which of the following apply to your child? Check all that apply to the child and explain in the comment section. If Other is checked, add the information in the field provided. Add any comments from the above fields if necessary. Person who filled out the needs assessment. Enter your name and the date the form was filled out. It should be the same date as the COE if possible. Enter your email address and your telephone number. It's important to submit the needs assessment for every child with your COE for data entry. Follow up with any services they may need that you are able to provide. Secondary and out-of-school youth may need a guidance counselor or reach out to Lydia Guzman, our secondary director at the Midwest Migrant Education Resource Center. If you're not sure how to help the family or student, look for other resources that may help, such as ABE, MERC, that's a free lending library, the regional recruiters. They may have contact information for different local community agencies, the guidance counselors, and community health services. The Migrant Student Information Exchange, or M6, is the national database. MIS 2000 data is uploaded into M6. Accounts are set up by the Migrant Education Services Data Systems Specialist, and she will provide further training. What can you do in M6? Send move notifications when students leave your area, receive notifications when students arrive in your area, review past move information to assist in determining worker status and child eligibility. However, you will still need to conduct an interview to determine if the family is eligible in our state. Review a student's migrant history to assist in the needs assessment process. Search for immunization flags. And run M6 student mobility reports to determine mobility patterns and plan recruitment efforts for our state. Contact our Migrant Education Services Data Systems Specialist if you need assistance with M6. The purpose of the re-interview is to confirm our state's eligibility determinations and the accuracy of the number of migrant children that our state reports. It also helps to identify and fix any problems in our state's IDNR process, and it can help to establish a discrepancy or defect rate for monitoring and funding purposes. The COEs for re-interviews are pulled randomly and assigned to the regional recruiters. They conduct 50 re-interviews for Minnesota and 50 re-interviews for North Dakota annually. Families should be notified that they may receive a phone call from a Tri-Valley employee who will be asking them questions about their move and agricultural work. The calls may be from a cell phone and are done at different hours of the day and over the weekends to try and reach the family. We are not checking their answers. We are making sure that the recruiters are determining eligibility correctly. We are also asking them for feedback on our programs and services that they may have received. The Migrant Education Services team is located at the Lee Center Administrative Office in Lee Center, Minnesota. We are Chris Young, the Assistant Director of Migrant Education Services. I am Claudia Melodic, the Migrant Education Services Manager. Linda Fournier, the Migrant Education Services Data System Specialist. Kathy Sklusacek, the Migrant Education Services Data Coordinator. And Guadalupe Ruiz, the Migrant Education Services Data Coordinator. Please reach out to us with any questions about the Migrant Education Program, recruitment requests, MEP eligibility concerns, or for assistance with MIS 2000 or M6. The IDNR team consists of 3 regional recruiters located in different areas of Minnesota and in North Dakota. Randall Fayez-Veta is in Region 1, Northwest Minnesota and North Dakota. Yadira Zamora is in Region 2, the metro area and Northeast Minnesota. Maria Davila is in Region 3, Southern Minnesota. They are responsible for the identification and recruitment of eligible migrant children in areas where we don't have certified migrant liaisons or other trained and certified staff. They connect families to local resources in the community, and they may provide some assistance in IDNR to help new recruiters get comfortable in conducting interviews with families to determine eligibility for the Migrant Education Program. They also conduct the North Dakota and Minnesota re-interviews. You may reach out to them if you need help finding local resources for migrant families. Eligibility Scenario Quiz. On April 10, 2019, Josie Alvarado, a single mother, moved from Eagle Pass, Texas to Washburn, Wisconsin to work in a dairy farm. A week and a half after arriving in Wisconsin, Josie began to work milking cows. On June 8, 2019, her 2 children, 10-year-old Jesus and 12-year-old Sophia, moved to join her in Wisconsin after finishing their school year in their home base in Texas. On July 15, 2019, Josie moved with Jesus and Sophia from Wisconsin to Anoka, Minnesota to work in a restaurant. If you interviewed Josie today, are her children eligible for the Migrant Education Program? What is the qualifying arrival date to enter on the COE if the children are eligible? What information do you enter for the worker? Use the MEP eligibility factors checklist to determine if the children in this scenario are eligible for the MEP. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I will send you the link to the certification test when you have emailed me Section 3 of the COE filled out with your eligibility determination for this scenario. The Section 3 was shared with the training materials. Once you send me your answers to the quiz questions on this PowerPoint presentation, I will share a link to the Title I-C MEP Eligibility Certification Test. Feel free to use any resources you have and take the test as many times as needed to get 100% to be certified. If you get a wrong answer and need to start over, do not try resuming the test. You will need to log in as if it's the first time taking the test unless you save to resume at a later date. So take your time and take notes in case you need to retake the test. If you need assistance or come across something that you feel we didn't cover, please reach out to me and I will help you. Once you get 100% on your test, we will be notified and your name will be added to the list of recruiters in the Minnesota Migrant Education Program database, MIS 2000. Good luck! This concludes the training for determining Migrant Education Program eligibility. You have joined a dedicated team of people throughout the state who work together to identify and recruit the migrant-eligible students in Minnesota. We welcome you to our team and look forward to working with you. Thank you.